You know, we don't forget about special teams here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Talking of Florida State, we got Logan Robinson on the line from Knoll Game Day. Of course, you join us every Tuesday night for Florida State Football Talk Live. Also join Logan on Knoll Game Day. And, of course, we got Georgia Tech in the opener coming up on a Saturday. Hey, Logan, how you doing?
Good evening, Mark. Finally here. It's game week. I'm excited. I feel like we've been previewing all of this for a while now. But we finally made it, and I'm excited. For some reason, this game and the opener and everything, it just feels like it's been so far away. But just fine to actually see some people hit some people on the field, so I'm ready.
Logan broke down the offense and the defense for us about a month ago, so just look those up on the channel right here. As we looked at it with James Blackman officially being named the starter just in the last week. Let's look at the special teams because, again, as I mentioned off the top, some people look at the offense, look at the defense, and then they move on. But special teams are about the third of the plays on the field. Ricky Aguayo is a guy that only hit 7 of 14 last year, and you got a couple candidates when you look at the redshirt freshman Ryan Fitzgerald, Parker Gothos, if that's how you pronounce his name. Any other thoughts about place kicking and how confident you can be in that guy this year?
I don't think there's too much. There was supposedly a little competition during the offseason, but I think Fitzgerald is most certainly going to take the job here. He's had an impressive camp, had a 50-yard field goal made during one of their scrimmages inside Doak a couple weeks ago. So Ryan Fitzgerald is looking like your guy that is going to be your field goal guy. We haven't been able to see really much of him during his career so far, so it will be it'll be kind of watch and see kind of situation. But Florida State recruited him, and they're going to feel pretty solid with him. As we know, Mike Norvell is huge on special teams, every in and out, no matter what it is: punt return, kick return, kicking, field goal. So it's going to be a big focus for Ryan to get in there as a young guy and start performing well.
And the stats tell us that if you don't make the plays in the special teams, if you let big gaffes go where you're giving up big yardage, punt return, kickoff returns, you're turning the ball over, giving an extra possession, you're not going to win many of those games at all. And you talk about Norvell's reputation coming in, and you look at the performance over the last 2 or 3 years on special teams, which has not been good. So you got to feel good about the possible improvement there when you go across the board, punt, kickoff coverage, and the return game as well.
Yeah, no, it's huge. Special teams for Mike Norvell. He talked about it. It was one of the biggest things he talked about in his introductory press conference when he arrived in Tallahassee. He talked about special teams being one of the biggest main focus for Florida State. Because if you can do well there and focus on that part of the game, then your offense and defense should be solidified as having some success. So all around, when we get into it here, the special teams, you should see a pretty big upgrade for Florida State because it's been a struggle the last couple of years.
Logan, you got any preference in regards to who's back there on punt kickoff returns?
Well, luckily, I don't have to take any more guesses. I think we were taking a lot of them during this offseason, but we finally got the depth chart from Florida State. Some names here. And you said punt return, right, Mark?
Yeah, punt and kickoff.
Punt kick. So right now, I mean, it's a mix of both guys. So you got Travis Jay, who we didn't get to see much of at all. He's a DB. He also played quite a bit of offense during his time at Madison County and high school. He's been blowing up in camp. I think he's kind of going to be your next Greg Reed type build that we haven't seen in a while. Travis Jay is just going to take some burn at kick return. And then also Isaiah Bolden, Deshaun Corbin, and LaDamian Webb are your other 3 guys that are going to get some PT back there. This is no shock. I know a lot of people are kind of worried. FSU fans aren't used to really seeing this, having starting running backs be out there at kick return. But if you look at Memphis, Norvell did the same thing with his Cats, and they had success. And, you know, Deshaun Corbin came from Texas A&M. I think the biggest highlight from him in his career is bringing back the kick return for a touchdown. That's his highlight that everybody watched whenever they heard the news of him transferring. So Deshaun Corbin, this is kind of nothing new for him going there. Isaiah Bolden and LaDamian Webb. Isaiah Bolden actually is one of the speediest guys. So no, I'm all for it. He actually got some burn last season too back there. And also, like we said, LaDamian Webb, who's going to be kind of like your RB2, he's also going to get burned. So you're looking at your 1 and 2, your possible 1 and 2 running backs back there, which might be a little bit of a concern. I'm sure there's going to be some more players and maybe some wide receivers or other cats that are going to go back there if Corbin and Webb are kind of gassed out. You might just have Travis J and Bolden, but right now that's a pretty stacked kick return, which I'm excited about. On the other side, punt return, Travis J, once again, he's there getting some burn. I've also been hearing a lot about Keyshawn Helton getting some time during this camp and practice so far being at punt return, and so be it. He's on here along with Asante Samuel Jr. So DJ Matthews, which we've discussed all throughout our live shows on Tuesday nights, DJ Matthews is we're not expecting to see him at the start of the season whatsoever. It seems like he is intending on maybe opting out. There's no confirmation on that, but with DJ Matthews being gone, it's looking like a different 3 kind of guys: Jay, Samuel Jr., and Keyshawn Helton. And I'm really, really excited about this group because, like we know, special teams for Florida State has struggled a lot in the last couple of years. And you got to hope that, having a punt return and kick return to give some yards for this offense will help.
Check out the banner, folks, NoleGameDay.com. That's where you can catch Logan Robinson, the rest of the staff there covering Florida State every day. Please join Logan, of course, on Twitter. He's been at practice, just checking out the guys, providing video and updates constantly on that. And I go back to our offensive and defensive preview of Florida State personnel on both sides of the ball. And so look those videos up. And I also keep in mind that we got 10, 11, 12,000 views on those videos. We typically get like 2,000 views on our weekly show. So that tells me, Logan, we need to drag some of those people to our live show. So if you're watching the videos on Florida State personnel breakdowns, then you join us on Tuesday night, because it's a lot more than that. We talk the football, of course, but we just have a good time. And of course, now that we're in football season, it's a must. So 7 o'clock Eastern time every Tuesday night, talking Florida State football with Logan and the crew. The coaches, everybody focuses on the head coach. Okay, we got a new head coach. How good is he? What has he done in the past? What's he going to change? What's the culture going to look like? But those players, they communicate, they build relationships primarily with those position coaches. And once you hire a head coach, obviously he's going to bring in typically a whole new staff or close to it. So Mike Norvell's in play. There are high hopes about what he can do. But first, looking at the offense, your thoughts about the new staff, where you feel there could be improvements and maybe some concerns.
Well, I go straight to looking at the guy that's right below Norvell, really. I look at Coach Dillingham, who has a pretty big job on his hands with developing with James Blackman and younger cats. There's a younger generation of quarterbacks coming through, but then you've got Blackman and still a younger guy, Jordan Travis. So I'm really high on Dillingham. I think he's just Mike Norvell Jr. The chemistry between those two is going to excel. We've seen in the last staff. Last two seasons with Willie Taggart and his offensive coordinator, there's a lot of miscommunications, really bad chemistry, it seemed like at some points, and they weren't on the same pages on different scenarios. So that's why I'm looking optimistic for Florida State, because Dillingham and Norvell have worked together. So if any fan wants to have some kind of optimism heading into Saturday's game against Georgia Tech, I'd keep an eye on the sideline and see kind of how they're analyzing and agreeing or disagreeing and kind of coming up with better plays. And also that's going to be big for whenever they go into halftime. They're going to have to make adjustments. That's something that has been terrible the last couple of seasons for Florida State. Jimbo Fisher did a pretty decent and would save a lot of games by having good halftime adjustments. And that's not just because of Jimbo. That's because of the staff under him and how they were able to organize and get their chemistry down. So Dillingham is probably the guy that I'm excited about. And Ron Dugan's, he's not a new one, but Ron Dugan's has a lot of talent there. And I think in this year, you're going to see a lot of it blow up because there's too many guys with just outrageous different kind of attributes that should excel this season.
Interesting note on Kenny Dillingham that even though he's been with Norvell for quite some time, Arizona State, Memphis since 2016, he had the 1 year at Auburn just this last season. So keep in mind with Auburn, they not only have a big time SEC football program, they also had to mold in and bring in and develop a true freshman quarterback in Bo Nix. So Kenny Dillingham, certainly Nix made his mistakes, but he also led a team that finished in the top 15 in the nation. So he had to develop the quarterback there at Auburn, Bo Nix.
And I want to say one more coach because I almost forgot about him, and we've been talking about him. If you're watching our shows every Tuesday night, Coach Atkins, Alex Atkins, coming from Charlotte, put a few guys into the league, got a guy that's possibly going to start in the NFL this upcoming season. Coach Atkins has done a very nice, well job so far. We didn't get to see a spring or anything like that, but the depth chart was released earlier this week, and yes, the offensive line has moved around. That's why I did not want to predict the starting offensive lineman. I'd never want to do that until, when you have a new coach coming in, he's going to move around guys. And so from what I see here on this depth chart, it looks very optimistic. We've also heard really good things about Coach Atkins being one of the hardest workers and smart-minded guys that is probably going to have a really nice job later on in his career. Once he gets out of, if he leaves Tallahassee, there's just a lot of respect the coaches have for Coach Atkins on this staff. And obviously offensive line has been a huge struggle for Florida State the last 4 years or more. And we got to see some progress on that front. So Coach Atkins has a big job, but this offseason, there's been optimism, I believe. And it seems like James Blackman, he said earlier, I believe last night, saying that he really, really, truly does think this offensive line is going to make a jump. So Coach Atkins and all FSU fans have their fingers crossed once Saturday hits that players are not getting whiffed by ghosts around them.
It has been a while since Florida State fans have been healthy and feeling good about the offensive line, I should say. Adam Fuller on defense. I was looking at some numbers the other day. Tremendous improvement there at Memphis from the time that he jumped on board, made the Tigers a defense that made plays, swarmed to the football, got the turnovers, were aggressive, and got after it pretty well. And now, obviously, he takes over in Tallahassee.
Yep, and the thing with this is, you go to Memphis and, you're starting to see some good progression for him in his career and numbers-wise, but that's with that kind of talent. When you're heading here into Tallahassee, you're going to recruit defensive players even if you're not trying to. You're going to land a 4-star DB, and it's going to be like, all right, okay, cool, and you've already got 4 of them before that. Heading into the season, you're going to have 5 or more. There's just so much stacked talent all around it. Not only DBs, you actually have some linebackers now that have been developed under Coach Storms, a strength and conditioning coach, that actually look like linebackers. He's also got one of the country's best defensive line coming in this season. There's good word about Joshua Kando, who should look like an NFL player when he was at IMG in high school. He looks like he's ready to rock and roll. Janarius Robinson, if he can keep his consistency, he's already a freak of nature. If you can have those two big guys on the sides with consistency on the defensive end and bring pressure, then Adam Fuller, this should be not too much of a hard job for him. Yeah, there's little things where the DBs have got to be coached better. It's been piss poor the last couple of seasons, and it's sad because you have that talent there that you've got to be able to develop and send those guys in the NFL, or at least simply just lock down these cats in the slots. It's just a lot of missed things the last couple of years between the last DCs and miscommunication that I hope once the season hits, Coach Fuller is able to start progressing and bringing Florida State up into being a top 30, at minimum, a top 30. It should be a top 25 defense with the talent. There's just no way to BS it. This team has the talent. It's just got to be coached well and developed.
Anything else on the defensive side with the other coaches coming in play?
Yeah, I want to see Coach Marv. I think he's my number one and favorite coach, definitely defensively, that I have a lot of optimism for. I'm eager to see some of these younger linebackers that we haven't really seen much from get out there and play. There's even younger guys, DJ Lundy, Steven Dix Jr., who looks like a young Ernie Sims. I want to see how these linebackers play, where they're put at on the field. That was a big concern. Under Taggart and Barnett, there was just guys in the wrong situations at the wrong time. And that happened not just game by game. It happened about quarter by quarter, and it was really embarrassing. I mean, whenever us or even fans at home are able to tell, hey, that 250-pound defensive end probably shouldn't be covering that 5'11" slot wide receiver, that's probably a concern. And there was just a lot of miscommunication in that linebacker unit. The guys were small. They looked like little babies out there, if we're being honest. With Coach Storms and Chris Marv, they've developed these guys into being built. And I think you've got a lot more smarter players too under Marv, because he seems like another guy. Him and Coach Atkins, the two youngest coaches, or two of the youngest coaches on staff, they have a chance to really move on and be special and have probably head coaching gigs in the next 5 years or so or less. But yeah, Coach Marv and developing these linebackers, you got to see progression there.
Talking up the Noles here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We have offensive and defensive breakdowns with Logan Robinson from Nole Game Day posted. So check out those videos before the opener against Georgia Tech on Saturday. Here we're tackling special teams, the coaching staff, and the schedule. All right. First thing that jumps out to me, Logan, and of course, just to set down the format for everyone, this is the second edition, of course, of the ACC schedule. So we're going from 8 conference games to 10. Take out all the non-conference games, basically. So no Boise State, West Virginia, Florida. You get the one non-conference game in Jacksonville State, and that's pretty much what we've got. The first thing that comes to mind to me, Logan, which makes this difficult, is that Clemson, Notre Dame, Miami, North Carolina. I consider those to be probably the 4 best. You could go not necessarily Miami, but Clemson, Notre Dame at the top. Then you've got an argument about who are the best teams after those two. But Florida State's one of only 2 teams in the league that has to play Clemson, Notre Dame, Miami, and North Carolina. So they don't give much of a light touch there. They do miss Virginia Tech. They got the opener against Georgia Tech. So once you run down this schedule, what stands out for you?
Probably the biggest game that I'm really excited about and has, I think, the best storyline is Sam Howell coming into Tallahassee and having to face the Noles. He was once a big-time commit for Florida State and was going to be their next quarterback, probably their big one that was going to last a great amount of time and actually have some production and maybe bring them back to some prominence. But things didn't go too well between Taggart, Walt Bell, and him and his dad. And so he's going to be coming back into Tallahassee. I'm sure that defense is going to want to get after him. And I think it's also going to be a great game for Florida State. I think you got a great, fingers crossed at that time with the talent that we're seeing, a great defense with Florida State and that defensive line going against which should be a pretty good offense under North Carolina. So I think that's probably the number one game that excites me, that I think will actually be a game. I don't think it will be a blowout because, of course, you got Notre Dame and Clemson here, bigger names. But a good game in Tallahassee is North Carolina to me, with Sam Howell coming back into Tallahassee.
If you let the Jacksonville State game go and just look at the ACC, this is a rugged stretch here. You go on the road week 2 at Miami, next ACC games at Notre Dame, North Carolina at Louisville, and then even if you tack on Pitt, who's kind of under the radar. A lot of people like Pitt as one of the underrated defenses in the country, and they got Kenny Pickett coming back for his 4th year at quarterback. But that's a rugged stretch, and then aside from Clemson, it kind of lightens up late where you should be able to tack on some wins.
Yeah, that's not a fun stretch. Luckily, I think the optimistic thing is it's a really weird schedule. First of all, you play Georgia Tech, get the off, and then you face Miami as your next game, and you're going to Miami. It's been really weird with how people are projecting this game to go. A lot of people are saying Florida State should win this game, and then we're like, well, I'm not too sure about that. I don't know if people are they're buying into the Mike Norvell, and then they're going to actually there has been close games the last couple of seasons between Florida State and Miami. The way that Florida State loses is because they've screwed up and made their own mistakes. So maybe that's why they're saying, oh, Florida State should be able to fix this with some good discipline and organization on that team. But that being your second game of the season is really interesting. I do think you're starting off against Georgia Tech. You get to go back and watch some film, see what works. You actually get to see which offensive tackles are in the right positions and seeing if that's actually going to be your solid five moving into your Miami game. And you possibly get Hamza Nasruddin, who will not be starting against Georgia Tech, and we won't be seeing him. So he gets another 2 weeks to get in there, and probably he'll start off his season against Miami being probably one of the best safeties coming back this season in college football. So that those 3 games, or those 3 weeks is just so weird to me. But I'm not even gonna say it, but I mean that Miami game, we'll see.
Well, what seems to be in Miami's favor for me is obviously they won the game last year. They're also at home. They're going to be better at quarterback. They should be with De'Ara King over N'Kosi Perry most of last season and Jaron Williams. So that's where I would see Miami being have the upside there. But if you look at the football power index, they like Florida State at 73% in this thing against Miami. So they're feeling good about the Noles. And actually, if you add it all up, they've got Florida State only as an underdog against Notre Dame on the road at 27%, at Louisville at 38%, and then, of course, the game against Clemson at 9%. So if the football power index wins out, then the Noles go 8-3.
And that's exactly what I have predicted on our shows. I've said Florida State beats Miami, but your losses are against Notre Dame at Notre Dame, Clemson, and I was flip-flop. It was hard to figure out if I wanted to pick either North Carolina or Louisville. I ended up going with Louisville at Louisville for Florida State to lose this game. I don't think this whole offseason I really talked about Louisville that much, but for some reason I really do think the game against North Carolina in town, Florida State's going to be fired up about this game. But you go into that and then you go to Louisville with an up-and-coming coach there. I think it will be a little bit of a struggle. So that's why I kind of had to pick between those two, but I am sticking with an 8-3, which is phenomenal. I mean, that's huge, I think, for Florida State heading into an actual season. I mean, that's gigantic. You didn't have a spring to really go off of it all. You went through a pandemic. You went through all these distractions all over the place. You also lost players. You lost starters. That is such a huge, that's just a lot of good optimism heading into 2021, I think.
Yeah, with everything that you just mentioned, considering this program's gone 18-20 the last 3 years, and the last time they only lost 3 games, they went and won the Orange Bowl and finished in the top 10 in the nation. Yeah, I think most reasonable Seminole fans, even though I see a lot of 10-1s in the chats, to be reasonable, calm down a little bit. There's a lot of decent teams in the ACC, Notre Dame's included in that. 8-3 would be a remarkable first season for Mike Norvell. And we'll see, of course, how it all plays out, starting with Georgia Tech on Saturday at home. Logan Robinson, Nole Game Day. Please check him out and the rest of the staff. Lock it in there for Florida State coverage constantly. And, of course, here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And, again, 12,000 views on the offensive and defensive breakdowns means there's a ton of people out there that want to see Florida State breakdown. That means you come to our Tuesday night show, 7 o'clock Eastern time every week, Florida State Football Live. All right, Logan, appreciate you stopping by, breaking this thing down for us.
Yes, I enjoyed every bit of it, and thank you for inviting me. It's football time. I'm excited. Let's get the kickoff. Let's hit somebody. Let's enjoy it.